Welcome to Collector's Choice. We're on Treaty 6 territory here in the beautiful city of Saskatoon. My name is Shelley Hosaluk and I'm a plein air painter. And today we're going to spend some time exploring the nuances and the art of plein air painting.
Shelley, what are some environmental challenges you face while painting plein air?
There are several, Evan. The first thing that I would consider when plein air painting is the temperature, and temperature is very important. I've painted in the desert where the paint on my brush is drying before the brush even can touch the paper. Other environmental considerations might be things such as lightning, if you're on top of a hill. Of course, rain is always there. Insect activity, red ants at the ankles, they like to bite and nibble. There are many different kinds of considerations. And sometimes, for example, painting in the cold of winter, you have to consider, are you going to be taking your gloves off? Will your fingers, for example, suffer from frostbite? There are different kinds of environmental considerations before you set out that you do want to consider in terms of how you dress and the type of equipment that you'll be taking with you for that particular painting session. When I painted this one, it was very warm in Saskatoon. We were at the beginning of a heat wave, and it was the beginning of July of 2021. I started this one with a brief pencil sketch and then moved into a pen and ink approach, adding the watercolor on top of it. But the paint dried very, very quickly that day. And I had to sit underneath a pine tree to capture enough shade because it was just so warm sitting outside in the environment that I was in. And even so, I was covered with sunscreen and I had a hat. So it's not a comfortable environment. Some of the other people I was painting with packed up and left early. I was into the painting and I wanted to finish it. And I was really enjoying the session, and I do like the heat, so I was okay with that. But that's not what everyone would favor, and so it's a bit off-putting. So you do need to be prepared for those kind of environmental conditions. And this one I painted down at the rowing club center on the park, and this is a view looking towards downtown Saskatoon. And that's Renee Duttridge in there. She was painting as well.
How would you prepare?
How would I prepare for any outdoor painting adventure? I think it's an adventure. For sure, taking enough water. I carry water to drink as well as water to paint with when I'm doing watercolor. And I also bring some snacks along. People who know me know that I like to eat, but if you're going to be walking a mile or two to get to a location, and you know that you're going to be sitting there for several hours by the time you get your work assembled or your equipment is assembled, and to get started with that process, you're probably going to get hungry at some point. So portable snacks, light snacks are very handy to have, but certainly having enough water on hand is an important consideration.
What are the differences between painting indoors versus outdoors?
That's a good question, Evan, and I think that I would share with you this painting as an example of an outdoor session. It was very, very windy that day, and I was on top of a benched area. I had my own chair, but it was between the train bridge and the newer bridge in Saskatoon, looking down towards the Minwasan Valley. So I was wide open on the flat plain when I was painting this, and I think you can see that I've tried to capture the wind. Well, I didn't really have much choice. It was very windy. That's what I was seeing. So this is an impression of the wind, and those environments can be quite challenging because sometimes the paper's flying away on you, and anything that you're using, your hair, if you've got long hair like I do, you've got to have that roped and tied back. Things are drying again very, very quickly when you're in a windy environment, so you're working fast. And I approached this as a type of almost gestural contour sketch or drawing before I started to apply the paint. And this was actually a very, very challenging piece to create.
Can you speak about your first experience?
My first experience with plein air painting would have been in Paris, and it would have been in the late 80s. I didn't know at the time how attracted I was to this particular medium, and I had not explored painting as a painter myself, although I had spent numerous hours in some of the top European galleries and top galleries in North America studying painting. I was always attracted to watercolor, but it was a sunny summer afternoon and I was walking along the Seine in Paris, and there was a bridge where either side of the bridge was covered with artists. You could barely walk down the middle of the street. It was certainly pre-COVID times. And these artists were seated outside and they were selling their artworks. And I was immensely captivated by this one fellow who would do a quick sketch in pencil, and then he would add his ink to the pencil sketch, briefly erase the pencil, and then move on in with his color, dropping various pieces of color. And I could not stop watching him, and at the time I said to my husband, I said, just leave me here for a couple of hours. And I sat and I watched, and that to me was the first real inspiration that I had for plein air painting. And it wasn't soon after that we were in Camden Town in London in the UK, where I purchased my first set of natural bristle brushes, as well as a cotton set of outdoor painting materials. And the first little plein air piece I did was back in France in Versailles. It was an actual little sketch of a treat area, and it was raining when I did it. So I've never been afraid to paint outdoors because it's pretty much the only thing that I knew how to do when I started painting.
Shelley, what's in your kit?
Well, my kit is pretty straightforward and pretty simple, and it has to be when I'm wanting to paint images such as this one, which I captured at the Gabriel Dumont Park here in Saskatoon. I carry a bag that is over the shoulder. It's small, it's about this size, and I have a small series and selection of brushes on the inside of the kit. Some of them are flat brushes, some of them are round brushes, some of them are rigger brushes which have a longer brush attached to them, but they are all watercolor type brushes. I have a variety of pencils. I prefer a type 2B lead because it's a soft lead. I have a kneadable gum eraser in there. Depending on where I'm going and what I'm doing, I have different small palettes that I've purchased as I've traveled about. Some companies make palettes that have more vibrant colors, some have more earthier colors, some have a more dull type of a palette, some have a very simple primary color palette. So I have small ones that I've purchased for different types of weather and for different types of sketching and watercolor paintings that I'd like to attempt. Inside there I also have a small container that I can fill with water, and I have some brush cleaner. I carry with me cut up paper towel and J-cloths so that I can use those to clean my brushes with that water. And it's amazing how a small container of water can keep me painting all day long. And if I need to, I can just refill it from my drinking water.
Do you have any tips for people that want to start plein air painting?
I think that some of the tips that I would consider before I were to embark on plein air painting would be, am I wanting to paint solitary or with a group? If I were to choose to be alone, there are some things to think about. For example, I did choose several summers ago to paint alone in the Canmore region, and I had to be careful for cougar activity and bear activity. So I did carry some things with me that would be helpful in case I were to encounter an animal. I also made sure that I made noise on a frequent occasion, and I moved around a fair bit so that I wasn't just staying in one spot. When you paint with a group of people, you have to be somewhere at a certain time. And that has its advantages and disadvantages because it can be very motivating to paint with a group of people and show up at a particular point in time and then have that opportunity to look at what other people are painting and for them to give you some critique or commentary on what it is that you're doing. So one of the tips that I would certainly have is to be open to other people looking at your work, and that means that you expose yourself with a sense of vulnerability to allow people to say, hey, I really like that, or what would happen if you tried this, or did you consider this, or how about changing the perspective on that? What would it look like if you added another line over here? And that's the beauty of working with a partner or with a small group. And I've been lucky to find groups of people to paint with. I have individual friends that want to go out with me for the day, or groups of people that will organize different types of outdoor painting activities. And so with those things in mind, there's always space for someone new to join. But I would want to really consider whether I want to paint on my own or if I want to paint with a group. And there's room for growth in both of those choices.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Shelley.
All right, thank you, and happy plein air painting.